Everything you see here, all the synths, all the sound sources and all the effects are basically being routed through this via the connections on the back and then going on from here into the Apollo X8. I just wanted to really show three ways I like to use this. The first one is the obvious one, which is I guess really what it's designed for, is patching synths and other sound sources into your hardware effects for recording or sampling. And obviously you can see here there's a whole row titled FX1 to FX8. So pre-labeled, that gives you an idea of how to set it up, and that is pretty much what I've got going on. I actually have on FX2 I have send return of the Mooga Fuga. FX3 I have the Zen delay. FX5 I have this little chain of pedals, so that's all coming out of FX5, so that's like a multi-effects chain. 6 is actually going in and out of the chorus echo. And you'll notice so far everything has been sending and returning in mono. Now on FX7, 8, I'm using this as a stereo pair. That's feeding the Eventide space. Now just to give you a really simple example of it in action, we've got Perkons coming in on A2. I'm going to send that out. Let's just remind ourselves where that's going. So FX2 is going to the Murph, and that's a combo I really like. Now you're not hearing anything because we've not patched it back to the Apollo yet, but we'll do that now. Out of the Murph, so we've gone Murph in, Murph return, and now as you can hear it's coming, the Perkons is back on through the Apollo. There we go, now we're applying the filters of the Murph, different patterns it has to the Perkons. And of course as soon as you unpatch these, you're completely bypassing that now. So that's the basic synth / sound source into effects, into DAW. And the other way is when you want to patch, say, one of your sound sources into another sound source. This provides a really handy way of doing that. So as an example, the Pro 3, you can hear they're just playing a nice pad. That's just with its onboard effects. This has an audio input. You can bring other sources in, external audio here. And so what we'll do is a little experiment. Going back down here, FX1 is not actually a send to an effect, it's a send, I guess you've guessed where this is going, it's a send to the Pro 3's audio input. So if I take the Perkons again, put it into FX1, that's now sending that audio into the Pro 3. Take it back out into the Apollo, you won't hear anything yet. We've got to turn the Apollo's, we've got to turn the Pro 3's external audio up, and then we've got to open basically the gate on the synth. Sorry, that's quite satisfying. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen then because I've never sent my Perkons with a drum groove through the Pro 3 before. First thing was it was quite loud. Let's turn it down a little bit. Let's try that again. So that's pretty incredible, isn't it? If I actually press hold, I'm now playing a chord, holding a chord with the Pro 3's sound, and that's being joined. And of course, what that means is I'm kind of melding the Perkons into the Pro 3's envelope and filter path, which is pretty amazing. Because obviously everything I start doing now on here, the filters with modulation will also affect that signal. So that's use case 2 when you're sending one synth into another. This makes it very easy to do. I've actually got the same thing set up on FX Synth 4 that actually goes into the audio input of the Matriarch. Also great fun, particularly because you can run stuff through its analog delay, which is one of the best you'll ever hear. Yeah, and the final tip of how to get the most out of the Minibay, I mean, there's loads of ways, but the ways I typically use it is as a CV router, because of course this doesn't just pass audio signals as we've been doing so far. Okay, so for the third way you can use the Minibay is with routing CV signals. So as you can see, the patch bay itself, all the routing is done through mini jacks, the same kind you use for Eurorack patching, etc. Little mono ones, so obviously you need pairs of them whenever you're routing stereo. In the case of CV signals, just for the purpose of this, what I've got here is the orange and blue are bringing out from the Pro 3 CV outputs 1 and 2, and I've configured those as modulation sources. So CV1 is going from note number, and CV2 is going from the auxiliary envelope, which is here. The Minibay is then patching out through these yellow and purple cables, just for this demonstration, into the TD3. I'm just doing that because I don't have spare ports. I've got all the routing of these taken up by the main ins and outs, basically. But yeah, obviously you can do various things, like in this summing section here, if you want, you can mult signals to a single destination. And similarly, you can use the other routing, if you like, to send and receive CV. But for this demonstration, all I'm doing, as I said, is just receiving from Pro 3 here and sending out. So when I press play on this sequence that I've just punched in to the Pro 3's sequencer, you can see it's firing the gate and note, or rather gate in and CV in, on the TD3. And if I start messing with the aux envelope controls, you see it'll start affecting the envelope, basically, that's controlling the gate here. Things to consider if you're thinking of using it in your studio. It's a very handy all-purpose tool, but you really need to think about how it's going to be utilised. This requires a totally different set of cabling to normal patch bays. So for instance, everything comes out in and out on these kind of Y cables, these splitters and combiners. So wherever you have signal coming from a synth with a mono jack, a TS cable like that, you have to combine it into one of these adapters, and then you're going to need your patching cables. Now, if you've got Eurorack gear and lots of these lying around already, that's not an issue, but you're gonna have to do that. And the second one is a bigger consideration, really. I've had to really think about the way my big synths are set up on this rack. I've had to really think about how do I get the cabling from all of those into there and then on its onward journey, which, like I said, in my case is to the Apollo underneath. So that's worked out okay, but I think this would probably work better for someone who has a bit of a tabletop or desktop setup, maybe lots of mini synths and smaller effects pedals, because it's more like compact and everything's, you know, within reach, and a bit easier to see how everything's connected. I mean, I'm happy with the way mine is set up now, but it's taken me quite a lot of trial and error and messing around with different cable combos and like repositioning equipment to work out that that's the sort of I guess optimal. Yeah, but lots of use cases. Very handy studio tool. I hope you found this video useful.